Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, the following is a collection of news from Patriots. Let's get into the news this late Friday night. This is not the way. Where is the fight? Where's the energy? Where is that anti-establishment flair that we've grown accustomed to and grown to love so deeply? Kevin McCarthy must step down. He clearly doesn't have the votes. There's a strong faction of the voter base that is saying no. They're being represented by their elected officials. And so it's probably time to find a new leader. Establishment McCarthy is not the guy, but in a truly disappointing update on this story, Donald Trump is coming out releasing public statements urging Republicans to stand by Kevin McCarthy, and I cannot express to you how disappointing this is coming from the man who coined the slogan "Drain the Swamp." Apparently draining the swamp means electing swamp creature Kevin McCarthy. It's a big strong no. I can sense the frustration of the America First base, and I'd say the frustration is quite justifiable. So let's continue to cover this story. All of the developments, of course, with a focus on the stance that Donald Trump is currently taking. All right, folks. So here's the headline, quote, "Take the victory and run." Donald Trump tells House GOP to vote McCarthy for Speaker. Donald Trump released these statements. Take the victory and run. Some really good conversations took place last night, and it's now time for all of our great Republican House members to vote for Kevin. Close the deal. Take the victory and watch crazy Nancy Pelosi fly back home to a very broken California, the only House Speaker in U.S. history to have lost the House twice. Republicans do not turn a great triumph into a giant and embarrassing defeat. It's time to celebrate. You deserve it. Kevin McCarthy will do a good job, and maybe even a great job. Just watch it. Follow it up by saying, if Republicans are going to fight, we ought to be fighting Mitch McConnell and his domineering China-loving boss, I mean wife, Coco Chow. The harm they have done to the Republican Party is incalculable. Today, he couldn't be elected dog catcher in Kentucky. Sadly, he only won because of my endorsement went up 21 points. Sorry. Now look, here's my reaction to this posts. None of it really makes sense. And I don't like any of it. Really. The first question that comes to mind is, what exactly does Kevin McCarthy have on Donald Trump? I mean, this seems quite counterintuitive to what the base is looking for. The base does not want Kevin McCarthy, sure. It's a victory as a whole, and Nancy Pelosi is gone. But that's already done with. Nancy Pelosi is not even in the running for House speakership. That's a Kim Jeffries. The real win that people are looking for here is a replacement to the old guard, Republican establishment, the swamp, and Kevin McCarthy is that guy. I mean, right now in real time, he's showing how much a swamp creature he really is. He's so desperately clinging on to power that even though he's on his way to losing his 6th vote, he's refusing to take the hint and back down. This shows us that Kevin McCarthy is more interested in his own career than he isn't the actual will of the Republican voter base. If he was being humble, if he was being genuine and fair, he'd step down and let somebody else take his place who can actually get all Republicans to rally behind. And I cannot express how utterly disappointing it is that Donald Trump would come out defending this guy, especially since Kevin McCarthy had every single point as tried to throw Donald Trump under a bus during situations where Donald Trump needed support the most. Everyone listen to this. That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action. But President Trump accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term. Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Paul Ryan, Nikki Haley-style Republicans representing the never-Trump faction of the Republican Party have only pretended to be a Trump ally when it suits the current political moment. Why exactly would Donald Trump risk his own brand for Kevin McCarthy? I don't get it. I seriously don't get it. But it kind of piles onto this idea that Donald Trump is always surrounding himself and getting into relationships with self-interested vultures. I mean, just speaking of all the shady characters that have surrounded Donald Trump over the years, individuals like Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr, and of course, John Bolton, as much as you might love Donald Trump as a president, it gets frustrating watching him put faith in all of these despicable swamp creatures as if this time it's going to be different. This time, they're going to change their ways, and all of a sudden, They're going to be loyal to the America First, 'cause I just don't think it's going to happen, and that's why I do. GOP voters want to see some new blood, some new fresh faces, people that they feel that they can trust, people with track records of trustworthiness. Nobody wants to put their faith in the establishment that has betrayed them for decades, thinking this time, it's going to be different. Kevin McCarthy had a phone call with Donald Trump and he promised him the world and then some. I don't trust him. And a good portion of the GOP doesn't either. And if you don't have the people's trust, and very simply, you cannot be trusted to be leader of the GOP House. Especially not in such an important, pivotal political time. And this is yet again another example. Just in that final Truth Social posts that I showed you guys earlier, Trump says that the fight needs to be against Mitch McConnell and not Kevin McCarthy, then also saying that he endorsed Mitch McConnell and helped him win his re-election. You know, that's kind of the problem. And maybe people are saying enough is enough. Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, it's the same damn thing. Maybe it's time to stop caving into the establishment, to stop pretending like these people are your friends, because every single time they end up betraying Trump as saying that Kevin McCarthy is going to do a good job and maybe a great job, claiming that they had a discussion. Well, how are you supposed to trust that? How are you supposed to trust a swamp creature and his empty promises? Kevin McCarthy is always promising the world. But what does he deliver? Nothing. Capitulation to the Democrat agenda and a total refusal to be hawkish on any important issues to his own base. It's always a whole lot of claims, but no actual tangible results delivered. Electing Kevin McCarthy wouldn't be a victory for the American people or for Republican voters, it would be a victory for the status quo, a victory for the establishment, the same old, continuing with the blank checks to Ukraine, the no accountability status quo, and people are sick of it. They want something new. They want a real fighter in that position as House Speaker, and Kevin McCarthy is not that guy, not even close. And the idea that this is a loss or an embarrassment? Well, it simply doesn't make sense. Because if Kevin McCarthy gets replaced, and if the actual will of Republican voters is met, electing a leader that can actually unify the party and get everyone together on board, that would pay serious dividends in terms of basic enthusiasm and excitement over the future of the Republican Party, just defaulting to status quo McCarthy, because it might cause some turbulence in the short term. That's the path of least resistance, and it's going to continuously divide the party and make more and more GOP voters feel disenfranchised. I can't think of anything worse. Clearly, the GOP has not been successful under Ronna McDaniel, Mitch McConnell, and Kevin McCarthy. And very simply, that means things must change to breathe new fresh air and fresh life into the GOP, to start anew, a fresh slate ready to rock and roll and start winning elections again. At least that's my perspective, for whatever it's worth. And then, this is some big news. Healthcare for illegal aliens in Department of Homeland Security custody costs taxpayers $324 million a year, as over 30 million Americans go uninsured. American taxpayers are footing a $324 million annual bill to provide healthcare services to illegal aliens and Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody. A new report finds even as more than 30 million Americans continue to go uninsured, and ICE is your end report. There's a note that says, quote, in fiscal year 2022, ICE Health Service Corporation operating budget approached $324 million. During this time, it provided direct care, including medical and dental health services, to over 118,000 non-citizens housed at 19 facilities throughout the United States, which exceeded 1.1 million visits over the course of the fiscal year. I also oversaw compliance with healthcare-related detention standards for more than 120,000 non-citizens housed in 163 non-service staff facilities. Healthcare for detained illegal aliens is a rising cost for taxpayers in fiscal year 2021. The costs totaled $316 million, indicating an increased cost of about $8 million year to year. Meanwhile, more than 30 million Americans still do not have health insurance. According to the latest CDC estimates, including 27.5 million working-age adults. The number of Americans without health insurance does not capture the tens of millions of working and middle-class Americans who are insured but who struggled to cover costs and often put off doctor and dentist visits. As a result, already, taxpayers are forced to subsidize at least $18.5 billion of annual medical costs for illegal aliens living in the United States, according to estimates by the Center for Health Policy and Inequalities Research at Duke University, When American voters were polled by CNN on the issue in July of 2019, nearly 6 in 10 said they were opposed to forcing taxpayers to provide free health benefits to illegal aliens, including 63% of swing voters and 61% of self-described moderates. Joe Biden to visit the U.S.-Mexico border next week. Joe Biden will visit the U.S.-Mexico border next week, almost 2 years after he effectively opened the door to millions of migrants. Quote, "That's my intention. We're working out the details right now," Biden told reporters. The location for the visit is not revealed, but it is scheduled around an international meeting in Mexico City when Biden will meet with the Canadian Prime Minister, and Mexican President Biden has distanced himself from the border flood by avoiding questions and delegating responsibility to D.P. Harris and Alejandro Mayorkas. His pro-migration Cuban-born Homeland Security chief Biden's deputies have been negotiating border security issues with Mexico's pro-Mexico president, so the Mexico meeting may be used to announce a new post-election labor and migration agreement among the three nations. The negotiations have been kept very secret, but there is some evidence that Mexico is offering to help guard the U.S. border in exchange for benefits, such as a giveaway of more U.S. jobs to young Mexicans. Also, Biden's deputies are trying to formally convert the nation's chaotic and odd acknowledged extraction migration economic policy into a purposeful labor delivery pipeline to benefit investors and employers. Job openings stay much higher than expected, fueling inflation fears and expectations for Fed hikes. Job openings in the United States came in significantly above expectations for November, and the previous month's estimate saw a sizable upward revision underscoring persistent tightness in the U.S. labor market that is likely to fuel inflation worries and push the Federal Reserve to continue its rate hikes. The number of open positions at the end of November was 10.5 million. Topping even the highest estimates, the median forecast was for 10.1 million. The figures come from the Labor Department's Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, or JOLTS. One key measure of labor market tightness watched by Fed officials is the ratio of unemployed persons to open jobs. Typically, these are evenly matched just prior to the pandemic. There were 1.2 jobs per unemployed person, a level that was considered elevated at the time and a sign of a tight labor market for over a year. Now the ratio has been seriously unbalanced due to lower levels of unemployment and extremely elevated levels of job vacancies when as-built reports indicates that the ratio remained at 1.7 to 1 in December, a ratio unprecedented prior to the pandemic, but slightly lower than the 2 to 1 ratio seen just last year. The number of workers quitting their jobs rose in November to 4.2 million from 4 million, and the rate of quits ticked up from 2.6% of workers to 2.7% of workers. Quits are regarded as another measure of labor market tightness, as workers tend to voluntarily leave jobs when they expect they can get better pay or work elsewhere. Retired FBI boss says the agency has lost its independence and has been co-opted by liberal DOJ ideologies. Former Assistant Director Chris Sweater says the Bureau has been pressured into improper domestic spying and censorship. And a stunning rebuke. The FBI's retired Chief of Criminal Investigations says his old agency has yielded the independence Congress gave it under the law and is now subservient to a group of liberal ideologies inside the Justice Department who have pressured agents to stray into unwarranted domestic spying and censorship. Ex-FBI Assistant Director Chris Sweater on Tuesday became the latest law enforcement political figure to support creating an independent commission modeled after the U.S. Senate's 1970s Church Committee to investigate the FBI, its practices, and impose reforms on the storied law enforcement agency. He stated that the Bureau's problems start with the politicization of its ranks by DOJ. Quote, "What I see is that it's basically a wholesale takeover by the Department of Justice, which is filled with political appointees in every top position. And then by extension, right into the administration." Swiper said. He continues, quote, "You see DOJ people and many of the top executive positions inside the FBI right now. You see people that have made a career out of bouncing in and out of silk-stocking law firms between the Department of Justice, and then these law firms. And I have to say that they are incredibly liberal in their politics. And that has now sort of taken over the FBI, and they are inserting that ideology into their high-profile investigations." Close quotes. The original partnerships, he said, were designed to legitimately counter foreign influence operations on us social media, but have since evolved into spying and censorship operations impacting Americans. Quote, "The FBI has an industry outreach program to help exchange information with industry, helping with counterintelligence efforts of the FBI. This has gone well beyond that. He concludes, quote, "This is nothing but domestic spying, and this is nothing but suppression of First Amendment rights and ideas." Former GOP lawmaker excited to join CNN as a political senior commentator, former Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has become a CNN senior political commentator. During an appearance on the channel, Kinzinger noted that he was excited to join CNN. Kinzinger was one of the 10 House Republicans to vote in favor of impeaching Trump. Kinzinger had served as a House lawmaker since 2011. Beside in 2021, that the time had come for him to move on from Congress, and he did not seek re-election in 2022. He and Representative Liz Cheney served on a committee together. Speaking of his experience, he said, quote, "It's not that we're courageous. We're really not. It's that cowardice is everywhere. I'll have zero regrets. And I know my kid, I know this, he will be proud to have the last name, and a lot of my colleagues will have kids that will be ashamed of them. Thank you very much. WWG1WGA. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button to watch the next episode.